Hello students, let's do the next problem. And it says, which expression is equivalent to 4x to the 6th power raised to the half power? Okay, so let's see if we can understand the question. Well, first of all, there is an exponent outside the parentheses. Is that right? So be careful with that. Anytime that there's a parenthesis and exponents are outside, it means that everything inside the parenthesis needs to be raised to that power. Therefore, 4 needs to be raised to the half power, and x to the 6th power also needs to be raised to that power. Are we clear? Okay, so 4 to the half power will give you a 2. It's like saying square root of 4. Okay, good. Now the next one, I can recognize that is a power to a power. What do we do when I have a problem that is being raised to another power? Okay, anybody remembers? We have a few questions that we have done before. So power to a power, I'm going to write it down. Power to a power means that you will need to multiply the exponents. Multiply the exponents. So in this case, x to the 6th power, that 6 is the power that I will need to multiply by half, and I will get x to the 3rd power. Very good. So my answer is 2x to the 3rd power. And that will be my answer. Okay? This is my answer. Very good. Just power to a power. Let's do the next problem. It says, simplify the following expression. So the problem that is given to me is 8x to the 4th power, y to the half power. So first of all, let's analyze my 8. What am I going to do with that 8? So my expression has a power or an exponent right outside the parentheses. Is that right? So again, that means that everything inside the parentheses needs to be raised to that power. Therefore, 8 needs to be raised to the half power. X to the 4th power needs to be raised to the half power. Very good. And last, y also needs to be raised to the half power. This y has no power. It's understood that it's a 1. So be careful with that. Don't forget that that 1/2 is going to affect each one of the terms inside the parentheses. Okay? I know that we're very tempted to place 8 1/2 in the calculator, but I can tell you that that's not the way that you guys will be tested. So we gotta make sure that we understand what 8 to the 1/2 power means. 8 to the 1/2 power means it's actually 8 under the square root of that, okay? So it means square root of 8. And if you remember what that means, it means 2 times 2 times 2. Because 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8. A little bit of review of powers and exponents, right? I need 2 to bring one of them outside, and that will be 2 square root of 2, or 2 times 2 to the half power. Because remember, the square root is the same thing as raising it to a half power. Everybody good on that? Okay, so I can write this down as 2 square root of 2. What about x to the fourth power raised to the half power? Okay, so that means that I need to multiply 4 times half. Is that right? And I do get a 2. So this will be x to the second power. And the last one, 1, which is the exponent inside the parentheses times half, gives me y to the half power. Now remember that y to the half power is the same as square root of y. Keep that in mind, because that's going to help you understand how we're going to write down the answers, right? So my answer is 2 square root of 2. Is that right? But I also have an x to the second power. And I also have a square root of y. So what I can do is I can rearrange my numbers. So the 2 that is outside the radical and that x to the second power kind of goes to the front. Notice how I have two things under a radical, the 2 and the y. Therefore, I can put both of them inside the radical. You can also write down the answer with the radical, change that to a fraction as an exponent. So therefore, the 2 and the y, both of them will be raised to the half power. And any of those two are my answers. Okay? Okay, let's move on to the next question. It says, simplify the following expression. Now, don't be afraid when you see very long problems like this ones, okay? Because it is possible that they're not that complicated. So don't get frustrated so easily, okay? So what I'm going to do first, I want you to check that there is a exponent outside the parentheses. So what do we do anytime that I have an exponent outside the parentheses? I'm going to multiply, I'm going to give that half power to each one of the terms inside the parentheses. So I'm going to start with 169 and I'm going to raise that to the half power. Then I'm going to move on to r to the 8th power and I'm going to raise it to the half power. Same thing with m raised to the half power. And last will be z to the second power raised to the half power. So everything inside the parentheses is going to be raised to the half power. Okay? Now remember that 169 is the same, 169 to the half power is the same as the square root of 169. Okay, remember that. And that, of course, will give you a 13. Very good. So I'm going to write my answers up here. So this one gives me a 13. What about the next one? Just remember that all you're doing on the following is just the power. So it's like saying 8 times half. Is that right? So that will give me r to the fourth power. 6 times half, oh, right? So that will give me m to the third power. And 2 times half gives me z to the... Now, I don't need to put a 1 for the z to the first power. We can just leave it like that. Therefore, my answer will be 13, r to the fourth, m to the third, and z. And this will be my answer. Okay? let's go on to the next one. So we still need to simplify the expression. Now it looks a little bit more ugly, right? But that's okay. That's okay. We got this. Okay, so let's see what are we gonna do first. Since I am multiplying, because I do see kind of like a dot in the middle, that means multiplication. So I will multiply 8 times 6. Is that right? 8 times 6 gives me 48. Very good. Now, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to think about that as a fraction. And in a fraction, I multiply numerator by numerator, denominator by denominator. So I'm going to rewrite everything that is on the numerator. I do not worry about the 6 because I already took care of that. Is that right? In the denominator, of course, I need to multiply 3 times 4 because they're two independent coefficients, right? So that gives me a 12 times z to the second power times k to the fifth power. So I kind of got rid of that multiplication in the middle, right? So now what I can do is I can do power. I can multiply my bases, right? And if I want to multiply, then I need to follow the rule for multiplying exponents. And if I want to do the division, then I will need to do the rule for division. So I rather do multiplying the rule for multiplication, okay? Which means you're going to add the exponents. Very good. Okay, so I have the rule on the top of my paper just to help you remember that. It's right here. So it says that I'm supposed to add the exponent. So the first thing I need to do is see who are the bases that I can combine. So on my numerator, I can combine the k with that k, and I can combine the z with the second z. Everybody with me? Okay, so let's do it. I'm going to rewrite it just so that I don't get confused. So this means k to the third power plus -1. Is that right? Because it says I'm supposed to add them up. Okay, so what do I get? I'm going to get k to the second power. What about z? Well, z, it's a -5. I am supposed to add to the 4. And that gives me z to the -1 power. So I'm going to rewrite it here. So I have 48. And now it's k to the second power. And it's z to the -1 power. All of that over 12 z to the second power, k to the fifth power. Notice how I still have a negative exponent, but that's okay because that's not my final answer. So what I need to do next is I need to divide 48 divided by 12. Is that right? And that gives me a 4. Very good. And now I need to look at my next ones and see what is it that I can do with my bases. Well, I can see that k, in this case, can be combined or can be applied the rule for that k on the denominator. Now, since one is numerator, the other one is denominator, then the rule for that is not adding no more or multiplying, right? This is a division. What do I do with the exponents when I'm dividing? I subtract them. Very good. So I'm going to write it down over here. So it'll be k 2 minus 5. And that gives me k to the -3rd power. Very good. How about z? Z to the -1 minus 2. Is that right? Okay, so we do get z to the -3rd power, right? So now I'm going to rewrite my final answer. So that would be 4, since both of them are negatives, right? I'm going to write down my answer over here. Okay, so since 4 was my answer for the coefficients, I'm going to write it down. Since both answers are negatives, I cannot leave them on the numerator. I need to put them on the denominator. So that will be k to the third power and z to the third power. And that will be my answer. Okay, this is my answer right here. Let me choose a different color, right? And that's my answer. That's a little bit longer, right?